Okay. This next up on the workbench is a new step for me. I have gone in and invested in an Anycubic Photon Mono X 3D resin printer. As you can see by the little cube here, it does work. I currently have it running on a model of a craft I modeled in 3D a long time ago, but I've always wanted a physical model of. This way I don't have to scratch build it. What you're looking at here is a Terran Confederacy CF-37A Star Streak from some fiction I wrote. Well, I've been writing, never actually finished, but all that aside, what I'm currently trying to do is print one of these in 1/144th scale, which, based off those dimensions, will make it about 9 centimeters long. Well, it'll take a couple hours, but we'll see. Alright, as you can see, the print didn't go spotlessly. In fact, it didn't really print well at all. One of the landing gear printed, but other than that, we kind of had failure across the board. So, time to edit the mesh and see what we can do. Alright, now, looking at this, it's rather unremarkable. Except for one thing. I discovered there was a clear protector over that I had completely forgotten to remove, which might explain some of my print difficulties. Well, time for another try. And there we have it, after about 3 hours and 15 minutes. A completed print of a CF-37A Star Streak. Ignore the drip on the nose. That'll come off when I clean her up. But now we get her off the print bed and take her to the next steps. Okay. After cleaning it up and curing, we have our finished CF-37A Star Streak from my Terran Confederacy and Ishtari Commonwealth universe. It's green, but that's because that's the resin I've got to work with. But as you can see, even unprimered, it picked up a lot of the detail. I mean, an incredible amount of detail for this size. Got the landing gear and the doors. Had to open up a hole in the bottom of it to let the excess resin run out because I printed this hollow. But all in all, I'm very impressed with how that turned out. Now it just needs some paint. And here we have it sitting next to a Bandai 1/144th T-70 X-Wing fighter from the Star Wars sequel trilogy. And as you can see, size-wise, it's very comparable. Okay. Here we have the latest print off the Anycubic. This is not as detailed as the Star Streak, I admit. And you can see some droplets inside where the resin got trapped inside the printer. Let's slide this over here so it's not focusing on the keys. But you can still make out the cockpit windows, some of the construction lines in the mesh. This ship was designed based on Ranger 1 from the old Galaxy Rangers show. But this one I decided I had to print on the grounds that it was one of the very first meshes I had ever done in 3D. This was designed as Goldwing 1, the base ship for Bounty Hunter I used in an old RP. Like I said, it's a fairly basic mesh, but I had to honor the mesh in its history when I went in to do the 3D prints. All right, what we have here is a print hollow of the Terran Confederacy Heracles class battlecruiser. Same universe as the Starstreak from earlier. This particular print went really well. It was after the print that I ran into a problem. One of the hazards of printing hollow is you wind up with resin trapped inside the model. Resin that will not cure, by the way. So I drilled a couple of holes in the bottom to drain the resin. And I actually cracked the bottom. It didn't look like this last night after I took it off the printer. But when I came home today, this is what I found. And I just broke off another piece. So my recommendation is on smaller things like this, don't cast them hollow. Cast them solid. I'll be redoing this one solid. And as this one's already falling apart, I will be junking it. Live and learn. Alright, as you can see, I've printed out a second Starstreak. Did have a problem with the winglet breaking off. Luckily, I have the piece. I should be able to use some super glue to put that back on. Now, the reason I did a second Starstreak was I printed one of her sister ships, the CF-41A Corsair II, at the same 1/144th scale that I thought I'd printed that one at. Well, as you can see, there was definitely a scale issue. Well, after comparing this one to the two 1/144th YF-23s over there, I realized that one was probably actually at a more accurate scale. So I resized, using the cockpit as a gauge, I resized the Starstreak to better reflect that. It's a little rough, but, you know, I'm still getting used to this. I'm just happy to actually be able to design things and have them be, you know, become real. Alright, here we have the second printing of the CSS Enterprise Heracles class battlecruiser. This one, unlike the first one, was printed solid rather than hollow. Meant it used a little more resin, but I think the results actually speak for themselves. I'm very happy with the end result here. And as you can see, this time around, I didn't break off any of the deck guns. Now, scale-wise, we have up here the Battlestar Solaria. They're roughly the same scale. As you can see, there was a good reason for Enterprise, in our story back on the Rogues RP Crypt, to be very worried when the Solaria showed up on her sensors. Well, latest adventure in 3D printing. We're going. Okay, in the last bit, I mentioned that when I originally tried to scale the Star Streak to the Corsair 4, I'd made the Star Streak too small. I was actually wrong. I got looking at my data from Poser, where I've got the Star Streak scaled to a Poser figure, and it turned out I actually had the Corsair too big. So I rescaled the Corsair to go with the original Star Streak, and the net result was a bird slightly shorter with a slightly larger wingspan. Again, using the cockpits to scale. I've gotten the blue opaque resin, and I'm using it today in today's work. Also, I have gone in and attempted to print the bridge / cockpit for the CS Atalanta from the same story where I've got those guys from. Now, that's the one I originally printed. After testing with some N-scale figures, it was way too small. So I enlarged it. Well, it was almost big enough. So I enlarged it again. This one, based off my experiments with the figures, is dang near right at 1/144th scale, which put it to scale with the fighters. And, you know, eyeballing it, it looks about right. So now, using that stuff, I can actually try to plan out the full ship. But all in all, it's been a very productive couple of weeks learning the fine art of 3D printing. Okay, I got an opaque Star Streak printed up in 1/144th scale. Gonna have to adjust how it prints because the landing gear on that side, on that one didn't, on the blue one did not come out, whereas the landing gear on the translucent one came out just fine. Apologize for the hand. Now, one thing I've learned in working with the opaque resin is it does have to be shook up very thoroughly. You can get about 6 to 7 hours. You could probably do one long print, but if you do short prints, you could probably do 2 3.5 hour prints without having to remix it. So, you know, just something I'm learning as I do this. All in all, though, I do like that little guy. And it's going to be a very useful tool for me. I'm still learning some of the finer details on how to make it work right, though. Okay, let's start by throwing a disclaimer to my last comment concerning the opaque resin used by the Anycubic 3D printer. That comment may have been hasty, because part of the problem, I'm sure, is me still learning how to use the equipment and adjusting the pull rate and the power level, as well as the exposure time, creating that goop I was complaining about. Ran into a similar problem with another print of that same miniature that was giving me the problems. And then I found a YouTube video that mentioned the idea of changing the retract speed, make it slower so that it's less likely to pull off of the build plate when it goes to pull away from the fab. Now, before I continue babbling, the final print on this run is another one of my Terran Confederacy designs. This one's actually their bad guy ship, the Conray Da, I call it. As you can see, it's a fairly complex miniature. And what I've got here is a roughly 1/4000th scale fourth or fifth attempt to print it. As you can see, the bottom is not as crisp as I would like, but the big kicker in showing you where the problem came in, if I can get it to focus on the miniature instead of the clutter behind me, is the fact that upper end, or that back end, is actually raising up a little. It's supposed to be straight across. That is coming from it pulling away from the build plate during the print process, because it prints, as I've got it set right now, it prints upside down. So I'm still learning, and I probably will be for a while. I hope my trials and travails can help you guys figure out this lovely new hobby.